The stars above Aurea 9 shimmered like glass caught in breath. The Galactic Council chamber was carved from translucent alloys that hummed faintly, as if remembering the last 7 centuries of peace. And then, as always, the humans were late. The doors parted with a hiss, and General Evelyn Carter strode in, coffee mug in hand, a small smile playing at her lips. Her uniform was neat but lived in, the kind of precision earned from habit rather than vanity. "Traffic," she said dryly. "You'd think by now someone would invent a lane for species that still drive themselves." The remark drew uneasy laughter. Humor was humanity's first weapon, and the aliens never knew when it would detonate. Behind her followed Lieutenant Marcus Dale, carrying too many data slates and nearly tripping over the threshold. He saluted the wrong direction, recovered, and whispered, "Smooth entrance, right, ma'am?" Evelyn didn't answer. Her eyes were already scanning the room. The VRI delegates with their cold reptilian patience, the amphibian scholar Vyler adjusting his translator mask, the Urix hive envoy vibrating softly in its exoskeletal chair. Each represented a species that had once gone to war with Earth. Each had signed the treaty that had held for 700 quiet years. Evelyn set her mug down beside the ceremonial scroll and flexed the fingers of her gloved right hand. The gloves were regulation, though no one knew the left hid a scar that never healed properly. Peace had a price, and she carried the receipt. The council chancellor, a crystalline being named Tasher, began the renewal ceremony. His voice resonated through the hall like chimes underwater. "By the light of the twin suns, let us reaffirm our mutual dedication to boredom," Marcus murmured. Evelyn elbowed him without breaking composure. Tasher continued, "To cooperation, transparency, and trust." The words floated, old as dust. VRI General Zarthel leaned toward Evelyn, tongue flicking. "I hear Earth disbanded its final orbital regiment. Truly a civilization maturing into gentleness." Evelyn's smile was pleasant, practiced. "Gentleness is underrated," she replied, "until you realize how much precision it takes to hold back." Zarthel blinked his lidless eyes, uncertain if he'd been threatened. The chamber brightened as drones projected the treaty hologram, a lattice of golden light hovering above the council table. One by one, delegates added their signatures, the air filled with ceremonial hums and coded flashes. When it came to Evelyn, she hesitated just long enough for every translator to catch the pause. "On behalf of Earth," she said softly, and pressed her thumbprint into the light. A pulse echoed through the room, confirmation of renewal. The treaty had survived another year. Applause rippled. Someone exhaled in relief. For a moment, peace seemed permanent again. Then the shock came. A lance of plasma hissed from the upper gallery, tearing through the hologram. The golden lattice shattered like glass, scattering light shards across the chamber. The beam grazed Evelyn's shoulder, searing cloth and skin before striking the far wall. Silence followed, the kind that folds time in half. Evelyn didn't flinch. She looked down at the small scorch blooming through her uniform, then at the smoking wall. Slowly, she set her coffee mug aside. "That," she said evenly, "was extremely rude." Marcus drew his sidearm, but she stopped him with a raised hand. "Don't," she murmured. "They're all watching." Guards swarmed the balconies. Alien voices crackled through translators, each language layered over the next in panicked chorus. The Urix envoy shrieked that it was sabotage. The VRI drew weapons. The amphibian delegate splashed backward into his hydration pod. Evelyn stood still until the chaos began to subside. Her voice, when it returned, was calm enough to cut through metal. "Lock the exits." Every guard hesitated. Then the chamber doors sealed with a heavy clang. She turned to the council. "Ladies, gentlemen, collective organisms, who fired that shot?" No one answered. Eyes avoided her gaze. Zarthel hissed something about human theatrics. Evelyn reached into her pocket, pulled out a small gauze strip, and pressed it to her wound. Blood soaked through almost immediately, a bright human color in the pale blue light. Marcus hovered near her. "Orders, ma'am." "Stand still," she said quietly. "We don't want anyone thinking we're startled." The chancellor trembled, facets flickering. "General Carter, Perhaps you should accept medical attention. I've had worse from seatbelts, she said. Then to the assembly. A weapon discharge during treaty renewal constitutes an act of war under Article 1. I assume that clause hasn't changed. No one dared reply. She smiled, a small, measured curve. Then it seems we have a problem. Peace is a delicate thing. You drop it once, it breaks. Her tone was still polite, even gentle, but the warmth had drained from it. The air itself seemed to notice. From the far side of the table, Weiler tried to speak. Surely this was an isolated assassination attempt, Evelyn interrupted. Let's call it what it is. Someone wanted to end 7 centuries of cooperation. The question is whether they wanted to end it with a bullet or with our reaction. Marcus whispered. You think we were baited? She didn't answer, just pressed harder on the gauze. Doesn't matter. Someone forgot how fast humans learn. In the observation decks above, security drones hovered uncertainly, scanning for trace energy. The report flashed across the holoscreen. Weapon signature, unknown composite. That meant someone had scrubbed its origin. Professional work. Evelyn looked around the chamber once more. To the untrained eye, her calm might have seemed serenity. To anyone who had ever fought beside her, it was the quiet before she started rearranging the battlefield. Counselors, she said, her voice returning to that diplomatic smoothness. Until we identify the shooter, I suggest you remain exactly where you are. Movement causes misunderstandings. Zarthel's frills darkened. You dare to command us in our own chamber? Evelyn met his stare. I dare to keep you alive. The lights dimmed briefly as defense shields engaged around the citadel. Outside, the planet's orbit glittered with sudden activity. Fleets repositioning, communication relays spiking. Fear traveled faster than light. Marcus leaned closer. If this goes wrong, half the quadrant will start aiming. That's the thing about peace, she murmured. It makes everyone lazy. They forget humans write faster under pressure. The Chancellor tried to regain control. Perhaps we should adjourn. No, Evelyn's voice snapped across the chamber like a whip. If we leave now, rumor wins. You all know how rumors start wars. She lifted her chin slightly. We stay. We investigate. We finish what we began. For a moment, even the air seemed to hold its breath. The aliens looked at one another, centuries of mistrust suspended in fragile calculation. Evelyn's composure anchored them more than any treaty could. Finally, Tasher managed. General Carter, humanity's restraint is appreciated. Evelyn gave a half-smile that didn't reach her eyes. Restraint is our favorite tradition. Then she turned toward the shattered hologram, the golden fragments still drifting like snow through the chamber's light. She reached out and caught one on her palm, its edges dissolving into faint heat. 700 years, she whispered, almost to herself. And still someone thinks we won't bleed again. Marcus looked at her, uneasy. What now, ma'am? Evelyn's eyes lingered on the broken light. The wound on her shoulder had stopped bleeding. The gauze was soaked, but she ignored it. Now? She said softly. Now we find out who fired that shot. She glanced toward the sealed doors, where guards stood rigid in silence. And we remind them what peace really costs. The council chamber remained still, the faint hum of energy fields pulsing like a heartbeat. Outside, the first ripples of rumor spread across the galaxy, carried by trembling transmissions. The treaty world has been attacked. The humans are still standing. Evelyn bent to retrieve her coffee mug, now cooling on the table. She took a sip, grimaced at the taste of metal and murmured, "Shame." It was finally the right temperature. Her voice lingered, calm and cutting, as the council stared in silence. The echo of that single shot still hung in the air, an invisible countdown toward something none of them could yet name. The sealed chamber pulsed with unease. Guards lined the walls like statues, translators whispered in broken rhythm, and the faint smell of ozone lingered from the shot that had grazed the human general. Evelyn Carter stood at the center of it all, her composure unervingly intact. Every species in the room, scaled, feathered, and metallic, watched her with the same silent thought. She should be furious. Instead, she smiled. 7 centuries without a single discharge, she said, adjusting her uniform sleeve as if brushing away dust. Someone must have been bored. Her voice held a soft amusement that carried sharper edges than steel. The amphibian delegate, Weiler, croaked nervously. General, surely this was an isolated incident, a malfunction perhaps? Evelyn's eyes flicked toward him, kind and cold all at once. Malfunctions don't aim for arteries, Ambassador. She turned to her aide. Marcus, update? He stood by the console, fingers dancing across hollow keys. Weapon signature scrubbed, ma'am. Whoever fired it knew our scanner's blind zones. They covered their tracks before the plasma cooled. She nodded, not surprised. Someone wanted to test our patience. Zarthel the Vree snorted, scales rippling. Or your bluff. Humans have always hidden behind charm and chaos. Evelyn's gaze met his, calm as still water. That's one interpretation. Another is that we've been civilized long enough to remember how not to start a war in a crowded room. A low murmur traveled through the chamber. The Hive envoy's voice vibrated in unison from 1,000 microthroats. Your species' capacity for deception is unnerving. Evelyn smiled again, slow, genuine, unsettling. That's what we call emotional intelligence. The remark earned awkward silence. Even Marcus coughed to disguise a grin. Beneath the humor, a darker calculation hummed behind her eyes. She wasn't improvising, she was measuring. Every reaction, every twitch, every delay was data. On the surface, the Galactic Council still looked intact. But through her neural link, Evelyn felt the tremors of chaos rippling beyond the Citadel. Fleets repositioning. AI observers transmitting coded alerts. The galaxy was holding its breath. She gestured toward the treaty hologram, still shattered in the air like frozen lightning. I don't like broken things left lying around, she murmured. Marcus, sweep the upper tiers. Quietly. Yes, ma'am. He slipped through a side passage, his boots echoing lightly. Evelyn turned back to the delegates. In the meantime, no one leaves. Our satellites are realigning. We'll know more soon. Zarthel hissed. You cannot imprison us, human. I could, she said pleasantly. But I won't. Not unless you make me. Her tone was diplomatic, her posture relaxed, but every alien present understood the message. There was a reason humans smiled so often. It made everyone else forget the teeth beneath. The Chancellor tried to reassert control, voice trembling. We must de-escalate. The treaty forbids unilateral measures. Evelyn cut in softly. So does attempted murder, Chancellor. The crystalline being flickered with stress, refracting light into frantic prisms. Perhaps we should wait for your government's guidance before taking further steps? Earth already knows, she said simply. No one asked how. The thought of human communication arrays made even the Hive uneasy. Rumors said their quantum relays could whisper through time itself. Weiler croaked. Surely humanity will not retaliate so swiftly over a single. Evelyn's head tilted, the smile fading. Retaliate? No, Ambassador. We're better than that. We prepare. Something subtle shifted in the air. The chamber lights dimmed as orbital networks recalibrated, and faint blue lines appeared across the ceiling, defense grids synchronizing. The aliens looked up, startled. Zarthel's voice dropped to a hiss. You came armed to a peace renewal. Evelyn clasped her hands behind her back. We came prepared for ceremony. But humans are old-fashioned. We never hold peace talks without knowing where the exits lead. Her words struck like a whisper of thunder. The Hive envoy began chittering in panic frequencies. Weiler's translator misfired and filled the room with static. The Council had forgotten that the galaxy's most unpredictable species had once been the deadliest. Evelyn moved to the central dais and faced them. You all think peace makes us harmless. But peace is just controlled tension. We've spent 700 years mastering control. Her gaze drifted toward the shattered hologram again. When we make jokes, you call us undisciplined. When we smile, you call us unpredictable. But you mistake calm for weakness. It's habit. A survival one. For the first time, her voice carried the faint edge of the soldier she used to be, the one buried beneath medals and diplomacy. The difference between predators and prey isn't in strength. It's in patience. A soft chime interrupted her speech. Marcus' voice echoed over her earpiece. Found something, ma'am. Not good. Sending feed. The display flickered to life above the table, footage from the observation deck. A cloaked figure retreating after the shot. Non-human proportions. Weapon grip reversed for left-hand use. The frame froze on the faint glint of a hive insignia. Instantly, the hive envoy erupted into layered voices. Lies. Manipulation. Humans forged this. Evelyn watched without comment, letting them scream, letting their own panic erode their dignity. Finally, she raised a single finger. Sit. Even the hive fell silent. Maybe it was you, she said mildly. Maybe not. But what matters isn't guilt, it's perception. And perception just declared the hive our primary suspect. Do you know what happens when that rumor leaves this room? The hive chorus quivered. Conflict. Exactly. She leaned closer, lowering her tone until it carried like smoke. You think humanity survived this long because we crave war. We don't. We survive because we understand what fear does to logic. Vyler swallowed hard. General, please. If humans act rashly. She smiled again. We don't act rashly, Ambassador. We schedule. He stared, not sure if she was joking. She wasn't. The timer in her neural link ticked down. 12 minutes had passed since the shot. That was the maximum response window under Earth's strategic doctrine. If no resolution appeared, protocols shifted from containment to control. She glanced toward the window. Nothing visible. But she knew what waited beyond the clouds. The Atlas Line. An entire fleet of stealth-capable ships positioned, coincidentally, within 5 minutes jump range. She turned back to the chamber. I'll be transparent with you. If Earth doesn't hear my voice confirming safety in the next 60 seconds, those ships will interpret silence as hostile takeover. The words hung like a blade in the air. Zarthel's frills flattened. You would destroy this world over one wound? Over one lie, she corrected. The Chancellor flickered frantically. General Carter, surely you jest. She pressed her comlink. Earth Command, this is Carter. Situation under review. Standby authorization code. Delta 9. Then she smiled once more, gentle and terrifying. See? We're civilized. Marcus re-entered, standing just inside the door. His voice was low. External comms confirm fleets moving, Vree and Hive both. They're preparing to protect their delegates. Evelyn sighed softly, as though hearing a child repeat a lesson incorrectly. They always think faster means smarter. Zarthel leaned forward, furious. If war begins again, it will be your fault. Evelyn met his eyes and with the faintest shrug said, Only if you survive long enough to write the report. The room froze. No one breathed. Somewhere deep in the planet's orbit, something vast shifted. Silent, unseen. She set her bloodied gauze on the table, neat as a signature. You have 12 minutes, she said softly, to prove peace still exists. Then she turned away, the calm returning like dawn after thunder. The smile never left her face, but everyone who saw it understood. It wasn't kindness. It was warning. The timer ticked inside Evelyn Carter's mind like a second heartbeat. 12 minutes. That was the threshold before the Atlas Line interpreted silence as permission. She stood at the center of the council chamber, her expression still polite, the faintest shadow of a smile curling at the edges. The aliens mistook that stillness for composure. They didn't realize it was calculation. Above the citadel, in orbit's cold hush, hundreds of human ships waited in cloaked formation. The fleet's silence was a kind of prayer, the sort only humans made before war. General Carter, Vyler croaked, his throat trembling. Your species must reconsider this countdown. It risks annihilation. Evelyn's voice remained calm. Then stop the clock. Find the shooter. Zarthal slammed his clawed hand on the table. We've scanned every corridor. If the Hive is responsible, why would they risk their seat in the council? Because chaos favors opportunists, she replied. And because someone believed humanity had gone soft. Marcus returned from the upper tiers, his breathing sharp from haste. Ma'am, we've confirmed 2 more things. The Hive ships are repositioning, and the Vri are scrambling interceptors for security. Everyone's pretending it's defensive. Evelyn didn't move. It never starts with an attack. It starts with pretending. The tension thickened. Ambassadors murmured in overlapping tongues. Every word felt like a spark landing near fuel. Evelyn's wound throbbed under the gauze, but pain was information, a reminder she was still alive, and they were all pretending not to be afraid. Her gaze drifted to the shattered treaty hologram, fragments floating like dying embers. 7 centuries of peace, she said softly. And we're still 1 heartbeat from instinct. Marcus frowned. Instinct, ma'am. She turned to him. Predator's plan. Prey reacts. Guess which kind we are. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The Chancellor tried to mediate again, his crystalline body flickering. If we could simply reopen communications. Denied, Evelyn said. Any transmission out of this room spreads the rumor faster. Containment first. Viler trembled in his hydration pod. Containment of what? Fear? Evelyn's lips curved. Exactly. The counselors exchanged uncertain glances. They'd seen human war before, 700 years ago, when Earth had burned half the stars around Orion, then rebuilt them for the survivors. But they'd never understood how humans won wars. Not by numbers, but by patience and narrative. Humanity had learned that the one who controlled the story controlled the fear. Evelyn turned to Marcus. Run an overlay. Fleet positions, planetary shields, possible infiltration routes. He projected the display. Dozens of red threads illuminated the holographic map. It looked like a spider's web waiting for a tremor. Zarthal's tail lashed. You've anticipated all of this. Preparation isn't guilt, Evelyn said, voice light. It's foresight. The kind you develop after surviving extinction twice. The Vri general hissed. You mean to frighten us into submission? No, she replied, stepping closer until her reflection gleamed in his eyes. I mean to remind you who you're sitting across from. The room fell silent. The Hive envoy pulsed with faint blue light, their chorus whispering in dissonance. Evelyn could hear them analyzing, calculating survival odds. It amused her. They always believed intellect made them safe. General, Marcus interrupted quietly, if we don't signal Earth soon, Atlas will. I know. She didn't raise her voice. That's why we'll end this before they have to act. He hesitated. How? By letting the guilty show themselves. At that, she ordered the chamber lights dimmed. The sudden half-dark threw the aliens into confusion. Only the table's faint glow lit their faces. Evelyn tapped her wrist, activating a silent pulse across the chamber, a scan pattern disguised as a neural disruption field. Every being stiffened slightly as the pulse rippled through them. Harmless to most, but revealing for one. From the far corner, the Hive envoy twitched violently, exoskeletal limbs spasming before they froze in mid-motion. A faint shimmer broke over its carapace, a cloaking distortion field collapsing. The guards leveled weapons. The room erupted. Evelyn didn't move. Stand down, she said evenly. If it wanted to shoot again, it already would have. The Hive envoy's central node convulsed, voice fracturing into static shrieks. You knew. Yes, she said. You've been leaking data to every faction that fears human resurgence. You wanted us blamed for restarting the cycle. Its eyes glowed like coals. You're all the same. The galaxy only stays peaceful because it's terrified of you. Evelyn's expression softened, almost pitying. Terrified? No. They've just learned cause and effect. She motioned to Marcus. He transmitted the feed directly to the Council's main archive. The evidence appeared, intercepted communications from Hive channels framing humanity for destabilization operations. The very plot they now accused others of. The council dissolved into uproar. Some shouted for punishment, others for withdrawal. Evelyn raised her voice just enough to slice through the noise. You wanted proof. There it is. The shooter was never the problem, the illusion of peace was. Her words stilled them. The aliens stared, not at the evidence, but at her, at how composed she remained with fleets waiting in orbit and empires trembling in her reflection. Marcus whispered. The 12-minute mark just hit. She nodded. Transmit all clear to Atlas. Level 1 only. He hesitated. Just level 1? Let them sweat, she said. They need to remember who almost ended them tonight. The order went through. Somewhere far above, the human fleet shifted formation, but did not withdraw. It simply hovered, watchful, silent, waiting for a reason. Evelyn turned back to the room. Peace doesn't survive on signatures. It survives on consequences. You break it, and you remember why we forged it in the first place. No one argued. The Hive envoy, trembling, began to dissolve into containment light. Evelyn watched without malice. If humanity wanted war, she said softly, we wouldn't need permission. For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the containment field, and the faint buzz of static across her comms. Then she turned to Marcus, her voice low. Get ready to brief Cerberus. We just proved the Council's corruption live. He blinked. You planned this? Her gaze never wavered. No, Marcus. I predicted it. Outside the windows, the stars flickered. It looked peaceful, almost beautiful. But everyone in the chamber knew better now. The stillness of the sky wasn't calm. It was human restraint. Evelyn retrieved her mug again, cold coffee swirling inside, and murmured. 12 minutes to midnight, and they still don't realize the clock never stopped. The air above Aurea 9 trembled under the silent weight of fleets. From the council balcony, Evelyn Carter looked out at the stars. Hundreds of them, each one hiding a human warship cloaked and waiting. Their formation traced a pattern only a strategist would recognize. A noose drawn in light. She didn't need to issue orders. The Atlas line already knew what to do if she went silent again. That was the point. Humanity had turned obedience into instinct. Inside the chamber, fear had settled into ritual. The Hive envoy's containment pod pulsed like a dying ember. The remaining delegates spoke in hushed tones, as though sound itself might provoke annihilation. Marcus stood near the edge of the dais, helmet tucked under his arm, eyes darting between the holographic displays. He whispered, Fleet confirms readiness on all fronts. They're waiting for your call, ma'am. Evelyn didn't answer right away. She could feel the wound in her shoulder throbbing with each heartbeat, a pulse of pain that tethered her to reality. 700 years of restraint, and still one trigger could turn the galaxy into ash. Waiting, she murmured. That's what humanity does best. We wait. The Vree General Zarthal dared to step forward. His scales were dull now, his voice brittle. General Carter, the Council recognizes your investigation has uncovered unpleasant truths. But if those ships fire... They won't, she said simply. Not unless you make them. Her tone was too calm for the situation, too human. Every word fell like a quiet strike. She had learned long ago that the most dangerous orders were delivered softly. The Chancellor's crystalline form flickered nervously. We can renegotiate. Draft new accords, renew our unity. Evelyn turned to face him, her expression unreadable. You mistake the issue, Chancellor. There's nothing to renegotiate. Peace doesn't come from paper. She gestured toward the cracked hologram of the treaty, still hanging like fractured glass. It comes from knowing what happens when you break it. The room darkened as the planetary shield cycled down. Outside, the full scope of the Atlas line shimmered into view, dozens of kilometers of polished metal reflecting the twin suns. For the first time, the aliens saw the fleet that had supposedly been decommissioned generations ago. Vyler's amphibian skin paled. You lied. The treaty forbade fleet armaments of that scale. Evelyn smiled faintly. No, Ambassador. It forbade visible fleets. Marcus tapped a command on his wrist unit, projecting archived footage onto the chamber walls. Centuries of hidden maintenance logs, encrypted resource movements, and erased shipyard registries. The illusion of human demilitarization unraveled before their eyes. Humanity had never disarmed, it had simply gone quiet. Zarthel whispered, almost reverently. You've been planning for this since the first piece. Evelyn met his gaze. Planning? No. Remembering. The word hit him harder than any weapon. She began pacing slowly around the table. You all convinced yourselves humanity evolved past war. You mistook silence for surrender, kindness for compliance. But we learned long ago that peace is not the absence of power, it's the discipline to hold it back. Every step echoed like a verdict. Marcus's voice was lower now, carrying only to her. Ma'am, Earth commands requesting status. They're ready to broadcast a statement to all systems. Evelyn considered it. Not yet. Let them wonder first. He hesitated. You really want them afraid? She looked at him then, her expression softening briefly. No, Marcus. I want them honest. Fear tells the truth better than any oath. The Hive envoy twitched inside its containment field. You humans call this restraint, yet you surround us with blades. Because blades remind everyone to choose their words carefully, she replied. A faint murmur spread through the chamber. For the first time, some of the delegates weren't angry, they were humbled. They began to understand that the human fleet wasn't posturing. It was a mirror held up to their own hypocrisy. The Chancellor spoke again, his tone trembling between awe and pleading. If humanity wanted to rule, no one could stop you. Evelyn stopped pacing. You're right. And that's exactly why we don't. The line fell into the silence like scripture. Even Marcus, who had heard her rhetoric before, felt the gravity of it. He saw in that moment, not just a soldier but the embodiment of Earth's paradox, the apex predator that built hospitals on the bones of battlefields. She turned toward the observation window. Beyond it, the Atlas line began to shift positions, every ship rotating in perfect synchronicity, a display of choreography so precise it resembled worship. No firing solutions, no aggression. Just orbiting light, calm and deliberate. Evelyn activated the external comms. Her voice carried not only through the chamber but across every listening ship, every planetary feed, every trembling observer in orbit. To the Galactic Council, and to all who can hear me, let this stand as proof. Humanity doesn't seek war. But if you force our hand, we will end it before it begins. Her voice hardened. We built peace out of discipline. We defended it with silence. And tonight, we remembered why. Marcus glanced at her wrist display, the timer she had set at the beginning of the crisis. It reached 0. Nothing exploded. No war began. Just a quiet exhale from a galaxy that had almost destroyed itself again. Zarthel lowered his head. Then what happens now? Evelyn regarded the delegates for a long moment. Now, you rebuild your council. Without the lies. Without the illusion that peace means forgetting what came before. You'll draft your own accountability measures, and you'll remember who taught you how. Her voice softened. Humanity won't intervene again unless we must. But understand this, our patience isn't infinite. It's measured. Vyler's translator crackled. Measured by what? By the time it takes a bullet to cross a room, she said quietly. That truth hung in the air. Terrifying, final, absolute. The Chancellor tried to speak, but emotion fractured his tone. You've turned mercy into threat. Evelyn gave a sad smile. No, Chancellor. We've turned threat into mercy. Outside, one by one, the Atlas ships dimmed their lights, folding back into invisibility. The darkness they left behind wasn't menace, it was memory. Every alien in that chamber would see that silhouette whenever they closed their eyes. Marcus looked to her, voice almost reverent. You think they'll keep the peace now? She exhaled slowly, leaning on the rail. Fear fades. But stories last. They'll tell this one for centuries. He hesitated. And us? She looked toward the horizon, where the twin suns were beginning to rise over the Citadel towers, light washing through broken glass. We'll go home. Quietly. Let them believe they negotiated their way out of this. He smiled faintly. You think they'll ever learn? Eventually, she said. When they stop mistaking our silence for safety. The council chamber remained still as she turned to leave, footsteps echoing softly against the polished floor. Her reflection crossed the fragments of the shattered treaty hologram, light scattering across her face like old ghosts of peace. Behind her, the chancellor whispered to no one in particular. The war that never started. Evelyn paused at the doorway, hearing him. Without turning, she replied, No. The war that never needed to. Then she walked out into the rising light.